heard about your company and what you do. WorkTech, is it HR tech? Is it more? Is it less?
I would say HR tech is inclusive within WorkTech. The distinguishing factor is that WorkTech really represents a focus on, think of it inclusively on the work and on not a top-down sort of command and control HR, strictly HR approach. And the systems in WorkTech or that distinguish themselves as WorkTech, whether it's hiring WorkTech or HR WorkTech, are more inclusive, more collaborative, and more focused on the internal team experience and employee and candidate experiences.
So in your talk, you talked about the role of COVID in how it evaluates the WorkTech and Recruitment Tech business. Can you tell something about it?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that COVID is not a creator. There are there's a lot of hype in the market about new trends or new technologies based on the experience we've had for the last 3 years globally. But I've yet to find a trend that wasn't underway prior to COVID. But what COVID is or has been is an accelerator. So, COVID, what it did create was a lot of pain, a lot of death, a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty as it relates to the workforce and the workplace drove a lot of innovation and accelerated a lot of the trends like distributed remote work, video interviewing, different hiring tools and technologies that really put us where we would have been in 10 years if it wasn't for COVID. And that's when I talk about COVID. That's really how I view it.
Yeah. We spoke earlier this morning with Paradox, and they say the same because you know them. They went sky high the last 2 years. So that's something we recognize, and also other vendors are telling us it works.
Yeah.
It's a negative situation, of course.
Right.
But for tech generally, I think it works very very well.
Yeah.
So. You also say HR tech is outperforming in the way we invest in it.
Yeah.
How come?
Well, it is outperforming the rest of the market. If you look at the investment, VC investment in tech overall, it's down by, I've seen as much as 56% from Q1 to Q2 this year. WorkTech, HR tech is not down. We had our record year in 2021 at about 18 billion. That was more than 3 times the biggest year before that. The first half of this year we're already over 9 billion, approaching 10 billion. Now we may have some challenges, but we've already had the second biggest year ever for HR tech in all time. So the reasons for that are like what you heard me talk about today. So a lot of what COVID also accelerated wasn't just technology development, but that development was brought on because CEOs, the C-suites, really stepped back during COVID and looked at, after they got their arms around their business and where the business was, they shifted immediately to the employees. How are they doing? Where are they? How can we support them? We still have a business to run. How are we going to hire for it? How are we going to resource it? How are we going to onboard? And all of these focuses and things like well-being, etc. There's no less focus as we're now wherever we are with the pandemic. We're in the coming out of it or learning how to live with it. There's still a huge focus there, and any technologies that are focused in those areas and driving business results, I think, are going to continue to see growth, whether it's revenue growth or investment growth.
Yeah. You also talked about the new recruiter.
Yeah.
How does he or she look like?
Yeah. Well, we've been asking recruiters to do a lot of things to demonstrate a lot of skills that they've never had before. So the examples I gave were being proficient with data. There are no data analysts that are recruiters that I've met. Looking at marketing and branding, and about 9 other distinct roles that really sound like specialist roles, but have been really heaped on the TA organization and recruiters themselves. So the new recruiter looks like a specialist. They look like a business partner who's managing the hiring workflow and the overall process, but probably has either a marketing slant or a data slant or a branding strength that they bring to that role. That's what the new recruiter looks like today.
Yeah. You also said that what you see is that companies are investing in technology and moving, for example, moving from apps to platforms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the reason for that?
Well, I think they're replacing platforms a lot. We've got this new wave of hiring WorkTech platforms. I mentioned Greenhouse and Smart Recruiters. I mentioned Paradox from a conversational perspective. And because of the focus on the employee, the internal hiring team, the external candidate experience, companies are looking to retool their organization, and they're investing in platforms that are going to improve those experiences externally and internally. They will still, though, bring in targeted applications or point solutions to augment those platforms. And in fact, Greenhouse has an incredibly large ecosystem of partners that are tightly integrated, and that's actually another distinguishing factor for WorkTech, for hiring WorkTech. If you look at Greenhouse, their API is open. Even their base level ecosystem partners are tightly integrated into the platform, and that's true for all of the hiring WorkTech platforms. It's just a cultural mindset that you won't find in the legacy platforms. They're much more rigid and controlled.
Yeah. You just mentioned the specialist. Recruiter is a specialist, but also recruitment marketing and the data analyst, for example. So it's the TA organization. Does every company has to have all those specialism in-house, or?
No, and I think depending on the size of your company and the size of your talent acquisition org, the larger teams will have specialists. They'll have a people operations function or recruitment operations function. They might have a data analyst that's available to them. They may have specialists for early careers and branding and marketing. Or in a smaller business, you'll have individuals who bring an additional skill set or develop additional skills. But what the research is showing us is that the organization is changing. The trends that are driving it are changing, and the tech that these TA teams are implementing it's a new wave of hiring WorkTech that they're implementing to support that.
Yeah. Last question is about diversity and inclusion. There's a lot, also here on RecFest, a lot of talks about it. Is technology is it a driver to tackle this problem, or an accelerator? How do you see the role of technology?
Yeah. I'm not a diversity, equity, inclusion expert, so I always say that up front. But what I do know is that the challenges that we face in the world around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, the challenges we face in the workforce or with any given employer, these are not challenges you solve with technology alone. These are systemic issues. It requires a rethinking of how we approach these issues. That said, we're lacking technology to help the professionals who are experts in those functions, or the organizations that are addressing these issues. I've been really underwhelmed with the little amount of investment we've seen globally, but I think that's because it's not a technology problem alone, and we need to see more maturity and more consistency in how these challenges are being addressed before we can standardize technology, because every culture is different, every company is different, and down to an employee level, it can be a very personal thing for how these situations are managed. So yeah, I think I hope I answered your question.
Yes,
but that's
did.
how I see it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you.